All right, good afternoon. Happy Friday, everyone. In a short while, I will be joined by Etienne Peterschmidt, the representative of the Food and Agriculture Organization in Somalia, and he will join us virtually to discuss the food security and famine situation there. The Secretary General arrived in Washington earlier this morning to attend the annual shareholders meeting of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. Shortly after his arrival, he met with the US Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, John Kerry. They agreed that joint efforts must be enhanced to mitigate emissions in G20 countries, provide finance to accelerate the transition to renewable energies, and protect people from devastating climate impacts, as we are only 3 weeks from the start of COP27. Just now, the Secretary General is at the opening meeting of the International Monetary and Financial Committee of the International Monetary Fund, where he will speak shortly. Later in the afternoon, he will deliver remarks at the plenary meeting of the Development Committee of the World Bank. During his interventions, the Secretary General will highlight urgent action to help developing countries in distress and advance the Sustainable Development Goals. He will also stress the need for more active support to developing countries as they make the transition to renewable energy. We issued a statement last night which said that the Secretary General welcomes the announcements that the governments of Lebanon and Israel have formally agreed to settle their maritime boundary dispute, as mediated by the United States. He strongly believes this encouraging development can promote increased stability in the region and enhance prosperity for the Lebanese and Israeli peoples. The United Nations remains committed to assisting the parties as requested. The Secretary General reiterates the commitment of the United Nations to support the effective implementation of Security Council Resolution 1701 and other relevant resolutions which remain essential to the stability of the region. In Ukraine, our colleagues on the ground tell us that airstrikes and missile attacks are continuing across the country, following the massive escalation of hostilities earlier in the week. In particular, the city of Zaporizhia in the southeast continues to be impacted on a daily basis, with reports of more civilian casualties and more damage to civilian infrastructure. We, along with our humanitarian partners, have been able to access more people in need in the areas of the eastern Kharkivska Oblast and the southern Khersonska Oblast, which have newly been retaken by Ukraine. Humanitarians have reached 13.4 million people with some form of assistance since the conflict began on the 24th of February. And in line with that, I also have the following to say, that the Secretary General reiterates his appeal to the Russian Federation that the International Committee of the Red Cross be granted full access to all prisoners of war in accordance with international humanitarian law, including the Third Geneva Convention. In Haiti, the latest Integrated Food Security Phase Classification Analysis, better known as the IPC, was published today and shows that the multiple crises the country is facing has pushed more men, women, and children into hunger. In the country, a record 4.7 million people are currently facing acute hunger, that is IPC 3 and above. This number includes 1.8 million people in the emergency phase of food insecurity, IPC 4, and for the first time ever in Haiti, 19,000 people are facing catastrophic levels of hunger, or level 5. These people are in Cité Soleil, which, as you know, is a part of the Port-au-Prince metropolitan area that has been greatly impacted by violence. The IPC analysis also shows that more people living in rural areas are facing emergency levels, or IPC 4. Harvest losses due to below average rainfall and last year's earthquake, the devastated part of the country's south, are among the shocks that worsen conditions for people there. Our colleagues say that inflation, including rising food and fuel prices, have made the basic food basket out of reach for many Haitians. Despite the volatile security situation in Port-au-Prince, WFP provided more than 100,000 people with emergency assistance in the metropolitan area this year. The agency also continues to work to strengthen national social protection and food systems. For its part, FAO has been providing emergency livelihood support to small-scale, vulnerable farming households. As we've said several times, access to people in need is crucial. And again today, WFP and FAO said that while they continue their work in Haiti, increased insecurity, violence, and lack of fuel are hampering humanitarian operations, which are critical for the most vulnerable Haitians. The UN mission in the Democratic Republic of the Congo tells us that efforts by UN peacekeepers and the Congolese armed forces to protect civilians along National Route 72 in Ituri's Jugu territory are showing positive results. To reinforce security, peacekeepers and the Congolese armed forces are regularly patrolling the section of this 90-kilometer road from Bunia to Fataki. The mission reports that peacekeepers based nearby are continuing to deter attacks by armed groups against displaced people by conducting day and night patrols to the Loda camp, as well as the town of Fataki. This area, once frequently targeted by the Codeco militia, is now seeing steady movement of goods, vehicles, and civilians. Reassured by the presence of national security forces and the UN, some displaced persons are also returning to their communities. In South Sudan, our peacekeeping mission is expressing grave concern about an outbreak of violence between the Dinka Ngok and Dinka Twik Mayardet youth in the border area between Abyei and Warap. The hostilities, which began in February, have resulted in the loss of many lives, destruction of homes, and displacement of thousands of civilians. There was a lull in the violence in June, but clashes have now resumed. UNMISS peacekeepers have been patrolling the area and are engaging with local authorities, women, and youth leaders. The mission has also welcomed the government's decision to investigate the clashes and to deploy troops to the area to restore peace. The Special Representative of the Secretary General, Nicholas Haysom, is urging community leaders to work together to end the violence and prevent retaliatory attacks. Our colleagues at the peacekeeping mission in Mali have condemned an attack against a passenger bus that took place earlier today close to Bandiagara. Many civilians died and others were injured as a result of this attack. We joined the mission to present our condolences to the families of the deceased and to wish a speedy recovery to those injured. In Nepal, our humanitarian colleagues tell us that heavy and unseasonal rains have driven up needs in the country's east. The UN Central Emergency Response Fund has allocated $3.2 million to 3 UN agencies to support communities before the impacts of flooding peak as part of an innovative approach to early warning, early humanitarian action, and disaster risk management in the face of climate change. The funds will be used to communicate early warning messages, distribute cash, food, and other items, and services such as legal and psychosocial counseling. More information on this is available online. In Zimbabwe, our team there is supporting authorities since a measles outbreak started 7 months ago in the eastern province of Manicaland. Over 7,000 cases have been reported so far from 46 other districts. In addition to the ongoing vaccination drive backed by the UN Children's Fund and the World Health Organization, the UN team is mobilizing additional resources through the UN Central Emergency Response Fund. The first phase of the national response kicked off last month and is targeting over 2.2 million children living in the most affected districts. UNICEF and WHO are providing technical and logistical assistance on vaccination activities, strengthening of disease surveillance, and ensuring adequate, high-quality treatment. And the team is now targeting an additional 4.3 million children as part of the second phase of the campaign. And I have the welcome news that our friends in Palakir have paid their dues for 2022. Thank you, Micronesia. A total of 133 member states have now paid in full. And later today at 1:15 p.m. after our guest, there will be a briefing here by Dr. Alice Jill Edwards, UN Special Rapporteur on Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman, or Degrading Treatment or Punishment. She'll be joined by Claude Heller, Chairperson of the Committee Against Torture, and Suzanne Jabour, Chairperson of the Subcommittee on Prevention of Torture. And then on Monday at 11 a.m., there will be a press briefing here by Irene Khan, the Special Rapporteur for Freedom of Expression and Opinion. And do you have any questions for me before we go to Etienne Peterschmidt? Yes, Edie.
Thank you very much, Farhan. A follow-up on the new Fuse report on Haiti. Level 5 is famine, basically. Is the UN team in Haiti actually seeing results of famine and large-scale deaths of Haitians?
I don't have large-scale deaths to report right now. Of course, this is a worry. Anytime you get to level 5, that is the worst possible level. And Cité Soleil, as you know, is a large heavily populated area of the capital city. At the same time, the sort of violence, the sort of unrest and tensions that we've seen have limited our access to actually get to different people. So we don't know necessarily how bad it's getting, although it's very clear it's very bad indeed. And we need to get access to people. We need to make sure that we can get food to people. As you know, we need to have sufficient fuel in order to travel to places to get to people. All of those are essential.
And at the moment, the UN and other aid agencies are still blocked from entering Cité Soleil.
At this stage, yeah, there's a lot of unrest. There are places where it's difficult to go. Our country director in Haiti said this morning that we're close to the breaking point and emphasized what the importance is of having access, and that is crucial. James and then Linda.
Staying on Haiti, if I can, the UN Security Council is meeting on Monday. There is a draft resolution that is being worked on, I believe, by the US and Mexico, that would sanction gangs. Particularly named is one gang leader who goes by the nom de guerre of Barbecue. What's the Secretary General's reaction to this sort of action? Is this the sort of action that's needed?
What is crucial for us is strong action that will make sure that we get access throughout the country. It's the lack of access that is harming people, and as Edie pointed out, this could be something that leads to deaths, and we want to avoid getting to that point where essentially the situation falls off a cliff. So that is what we want the council members to bear in mind as they consider the resolutions. What is the impact that the actions of the council will have in making sure that the influence of the gangs is broken and that we can get to the people we need to get to?
And just following up on the Secretary General's trip to Washington, Steph said yesterday that he was doing the autumn meetings, IMF and World Bank. He was seeing John Kerry, and when asked if he was going to meet anyone from the White House, he said probably no. State Department, I'll get back to you. Are there any further meetings that the Secretary General is having while he's in DC this afternoon?
At this stage, no, there's nothing to report beyond the meetings that I just mentioned now at the World Bank and the IMF.
So the Secretary General is not today, while in Washington, going to speak to anyone about the situation in Haiti?
We will see if there's any changes, but right now there's no further meetings to report to you. Yes, Linda.
Thank you, Farhan. This is regarding the Ukrainian war, which is obviously very active at this juncture. However, at some point we know that negotiations have to occur. And given that both sides have staked out maximalist positions, which, don't seem like they're compatible, I was wondering how active is the UN in developing possible scenarios for ending the war, for contributing to a diplomatic solution when negotiations begin?
We have reached out to the two governments. As you know, the Secretary General has been in dialogue with them. The steps that the UN has taken, whether you think of the release of people from the Azovstal steel plant, the Black Sea Grain Initiative, the efforts to open up markets to Russian food and fertilizers, are steps that we think can help improve the atmosphere in bits and pieces. But as the Secretary General has made clear, he doesn't think we're at the point yet where you can really make progress. If there's a way of moving forwards to actually resolving the conflict, he's willing to do whatever he can to aid that. And certainly the UN continues to be in touch with the parties to see what positive role we can play to move forward. But yes, for the reasons you described in your question, we're not at that point just yet. You first and then Demetrius.
Thank you so much. I want to, so President Zelensky and his administration gave 3 days to International Red Cross to reach Olenivka And I want to ask, how is it going with the UN fact-finding mission, and why they're still not there?
There's nothing to report in terms of the movement of the fact-finding mission. We still need to have the appropriate security guarantees in place for them to be able to go about their work. Regarding the Red Cross, you of course heard the appeal that I just made at the start of this briefing. Dimitrios?
Yes, thank you. Two questions. Russian President Vladimir Putin said today that any direct clash of NATO troops with Russia would lead to a global catastrophe. Now, President Erdogan met with President Putin, and I was wondering if the Secretary General had the chance to speak to President Erdogan, the only NATO leader at this point who is in direct talks with the Russian president after that meeting.
No. After that meeting, he did get some of the details of that meeting from the permanent representative of Turkey, and they had that discussion yesterday.
Just to follow up, I was wondering if you had anything from my question yesterday to Stefan in regards to President Erdogan's threats to Greece, which he repeated today, that they will come overnight, as well as on Greece's right to militarize its islands.
Yes, on that I can say the following. The Secretary General has stressed the importance of avoiding actions that can heighten tensions between Turkey and Greece, and has reiterated the importance of resolving all disputes peacefully. He has called on the two countries to re-engage in effective dialogue as a means to lower tensions. In this context, and as part of efforts to engage in dialogue and keep lines of communication open, we welcome the meeting that took place yesterday between the Greek and Turkish defense ministers in Brussels. Alan.
Thank you so much, Farhan. I have a follow-up on the ESG's appeal about the prisoners of war for the Russia to provide full access for ICRC for the prisoners. Do you have any confirmation that the ICRC had the full access to Russian prisoners of war at Ukrainian territory? And if not, why the appeal is addressed only to Russian side but not the Ukrainians as well? Thank you.
Well, first of all, the Third Geneva Convention applies to all participants in a conflict, and so that remains the case in all the situations that we deal with. Beyond that, for questions of access to prisoners of war, you need to ask those questions to the Red Cross. Deji?
I have several questions, Farhan. First, a follow-up with the questions from Veronica and Alan. Actually, I just want to ask you directly because today the readout of the Secretary General on the ICRC and the prisoner of wars issue resonated. Also, the appeal from Ukrainian President Zelensky. I just want to ask this. It feels to me there's something to do in Olenivka, that fact-finding mission. It's not there yet. I think from this point of view, can we say that it's because of Russian Federation that this fact-finding mission cannot go there?
No, I mean, I wouldn't go that far. The point is that the places that the fact-finding mission has to go through include active conflict zones, and therefore it's difficult to get the assurances we need. We just want to make sure that across the board, the conditions are right for them to get to Olenivka.
The second question concerning also the remarks by President Putin, he said that FSB stated that most likely the so-called cargo explosive carried by sea from Odessa, which made the explosion by the Crimean Bridge, by the way, but it has not been definitively established whether it was done with the help of grain trucks or not, which hint that if there's something like they said acts of terror carried by this humanitarian corridor of the Black Sea grain deal, they would close it. Actually, we know that Russian side has been quite critical on Black Sea grain initiative for the past few weeks. How would the United Nations react to this comment from Mr. Putin?
Well, I'm not going to respond to anything that's speculative about what happened. We'll have to see what the actual facts of that incident are. Regarding the grain deal as a whole, it's very clear the benefits that the Black Sea Grain Initiative has posed to the people of Ukraine, to the people of the Russian Federation, and to the wider world in terms of forestalling a problematic rise in food prices. It's clear from the meetings between President Erdogan and President Putin yesterday that they also see positive things about the grain deal, and we'll see where we go with that.
And last question on Palestine. Major groups from Palestine, including Hamas and Fatah, they signed a declaration of Algeria that agreed to hold legislative and presidential elections within a year. What's the UN's response on this?
We will continue to follow this matter closely, but obviously we would welcome any effort to bring those groups together in an electoral process. Yes, Benno.
Thank you. The High Representative of the European Union, Josep Borrell, for Foreign Affairs, said yesterday, any nuclear attack against Ukraine will create an answer, not a nuclear answer, but such a powerful answer from the military side that the Russian army will be annihilated. Do you have any comment to such rhetoric?
I don't have a comment to what he said. Our position against the use of nuclear weapons by any party is well known and obviously is unchanging. Stefano and then Edie.
Thank you, Farhan. Yes, as a follow-up about Haiti and what James and others asked before, when the Security Council is going to meet on Monday, what is exactly that the Secretary General Guterres expect from the Security Council to do? I mean, I think he asked a few days ago, he asked for deployment or armed force, and now the situation is even getting worse. So there is the specific request to do that to the Security Council?
You'll have seen the Secretary General's statement from earlier this week, as well as the letter that went out to the members of the Security Council. And his position is contained there. And beyond that, I believe that our special representative, Helen Lalim, will brief the Security Council on Monday and lay out our position in full. Edie.
Sorry, Farhan. I want to go back to two things. First, on Olenivka, this has now been going on for months, this delay in getting the fact-finding mission in. And the UN keeps saying that there are not yet appropriate security measures in place. Can you tell us why or who is failing to put these appropriate security measures in place and what the UN is doing to try and speed this up?
Well, we're working with the parties to make sure that we can get the access that we need and the right conditions that we need. I think at this point it wouldn't be helpful to that process to single out anyone. This is, again, an active conflict zone, and we want to make sure that that despite that, it will be safe for the team to travel.
I'm not finished yet.
Yeah, sure.
Can you get us a progress report on how close the UN is to getting these appropriate security measures?
Yeah, I will try, although, of course, if we actually have the measures in place, we'll finally be able to announce that they're going there. So hopefully that will be the good news that we'll have. But if we can say anything further than that, I'll see what else can possibly be said.
And I had a second follow-up on Zaporizhia.
Mm-hmm.
With all of this new incoming fire to the city, are any further steps being taken to ensure the protection of the nuclear plant, especially in light of Russia's announcement that it wanted to take over the administration of the plant?
Yes, I believe Rafael Grossi, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, has been in touch with the parties on this, and he's working to see what can be done to ensure, first and foremost, the safety of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. You had a question, and then back to Veronica.
Comments about Green Deal. Has Russia officially told the UN about those suspicions on the explosives? Was there any formal talk, complaints?
No, we have not received any official information along the lines of what your colleague had indicated. Veronica?
I want to ask a follow-up about Olenivka again, sorry. But I remember when the EIA mission was approaching to Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, Russia wanted them to come through Russian-controlled territory, not Ukrainian territory, Ukrainian-controlled. And that significantly slowed down the mission because Russia didn't want them to basically come from Ukrainian-controlled territory. Is the situation probably the same this time with Olenivka?
That's, you're entitled to your analysis. I don't have anything further to say. There's always a problem in terms of getting people into what are war zones, and this is the problem that we're facing. We're very hopeful that it will be resolved. This is something we're trying to resolve, but it's not. But we're not at that point yet, as you can see. It's as frustrating for us as it is for you, believe me. Joe Klein, you have a question online?
Thank you, Farhan. I'm following up actually on the question I asked Stefan last Friday, which is to confirm the Secretary General's receipt and review, he has received it, a complaint filed by UN Watch. And again, if he has received the complaint, what is he prepared to do about it? Thank you.
Hold on that. I think what I can say is that the complaint has been received and it's being processed. And with that, let me get to our guest. Hopefully he's still online.